What up, what up? Happy Black Friday, everybody. Hope y'all staying safe out there, ain't doing no dumb shit. And more importantly, I hope everyone had a great past couple days spending time with their family. I don't want to say happy Thanksgiving because if you look up what really transpired and what we're actually celebrating, it's not such a great holiday to celebrate based on history, but you know, whatever. But I'm gonna do a live stream. I just got off work. I was gonna do some Black Friday shopping, but I saw them crowds and the parking lot looked ridiculous. I couldn't find nowhere to park, so F it. But anywho, wanted to talk about a few things going on right now with boxing. We had a recent announcement that January 20th we're gonna have Errol Spence and Lamont Peterson. They're gonna fight out in New York. I think it's gonna be at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. It should be PBC. It'll probably be PBC Showtime. I'll have to get the details on that, get the specifics, but that should be a good fight, a good welcome back fight for Errol Spence. And you know, when the fight was first announced, I mean, for one, it's been in discussion for a few months, but at first glance, someone might think, oh damn, you know, Lamont Peterson and Errol Spence, it looks like Lamont Peterson is being sacrificed as like some kind of a sacrificial lamb or something like that. But I think people sleep on Lamont Peterson. He's actually very skilled. He's a game fighter. You know, he's going to come to fight. Him fighting Errol Spence or trying to beat him is going to be a tall order, but we do know that he's going to give 110% effort. And it could be a dogfight as long as it lasts. So we'll find out how that fight turns out. You know, both guys have shown to have a high punch output and to basically have that workers blue collar mentality where they're going to get in the trenches, they're going to get in close, and they're going to throw some body shots and give and take. So it'll be interesting to find out, to see how that fight transpires, who's going to have the edge, how Lamont's going to fight. I think with Errol, I mean, he's going to come forward. I mean, he's not some slow, plodding, predictable fighter. There's a method to his madness, but we do know that with Errol, more than likely, he's going to apply pressure. He's going to be smart about it. He's going to fight behind his jab. He's going to break you down, punish the body, cut the ring off, and eventually get you out of there. You know, he's coming off a sensational victory in what was a sensational fight with Kell Brook. He went to the UK, fought Kell Brook in his home turf, and I believe over 11 tough contested rounds, and he got the job done. He knocked him out. He stopped him. The corner threw the towel in for Kell Brook because he couldn't take any more damage. He got his right orbital bone cracked. So I mean, it was a wonderful performance, and I was back in May, so this is the first time seeing Errol. It's a long layoff. I think he wanted to get in there, get back in the ring sooner than what we're seeing in January of next year. But you know, sometimes things happen. The sport of boxing is politics, it's matchmaking issues. I know he's trying to get in there with the WBA and WBC unified champion Keith Thurman. And Keith Thurman, the last time he was in action, I believe, was in March against Danny Garcia in a unification fight. So he's been out of commission for a long time. And with Keith, he's had some issues with the injury. He had elbow surgery, and he's been recovering from that. And then he had some personal things to take care of. He got married and was doing things there. So, unfortunately for the boxing fans, we weren't able to see that matchup at the end of the year for this year. But hopefully, you know, we can see that fight next year. Hopefully the fight continues to build steam. Definitely the fans who are familiar with boxing or familiar with these names definitely want to see the fight. I think it's the best fight that we can make in the welterweight division. And it's a fight that has to happen. As expected, I believe Keith Thurman's going to get some warm-up fights, a warm-up bout at least, at some point early next year. And of course, this is going to be Errol Spence's warm-up fight. A stay busy fight with Lamont Peterson. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not sure who Keith Thurman's going to end up fighting. I believe for a period of time he was rumored to fight Jesse Vargas, but that's not going to happen. Jesse Vargas actually has a fight sometime next month. And I know Sean Porter had mentioned getting a rematch with Keith Thurman. Danny Garcia has mentioned getting a rematch with Keith Thurman. Devin Alexander, who recently came back from a 2-year layoff as he was dealing with some personal issues with drug addiction, being addicted to, I believe it was opioid pills or painkillers and whatnot, being addicted to that. He had a comeback last week on PBC with Toe to Toe Tuesday, and he looked pretty good. I mean, all things considered. So he mentioned fighting Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman in an interview actually mentioned fighting Devin Alexander, former 2 division champion. So that could be a pretty good warm-up fight for him. And if he's not careful, he can end up losing that fight. So we'll see what happens with that. If that's a fight that's discussed and made in the future. But I definitely expect to see Keith Thurman get at least 1 warm-up fight, probably 2, before fighting Errol Spence at the end of 2018. Hopefully we can see that fight. Hopefully, speaking of fights that I wish that we see in the year 2018, hopefully we'll see Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. They can make that happen. But we'll see what happens with that. This weekend we got Sergey Kovalev. He's fighting his return fight since being stopped by Andre Ward earlier this year in June. We have Sergey Kovalev who switched trainers. He's coming off 2 consecutive defeats, and there's a lot of ways to look at that. I mean, we can say, you know, Kovalev's in the downslide. He's a shell of himself, but to be honest, he didn't look too bad. I mean, how much can we penalize Kovalev for losing to the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world? I mean, we can't really penalize him for that. But we can critique the manner in which he lost. And by that, it just looked like he couldn't handle the pressure. And the first fight Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev had, it was a really good fight, very competitive. Kovalev was ahead for the early part of the fight on most people's scorecards, and after knocking Andre Ward down in the second round, many thought that, you know, this is going to be the typical Sergey Kovalev performance where he's outboxing and using his power to not only threaten and you know, keep his opponents intimidated and at bay, and keep him at the distance he wants due to his boxing skill, control of range, and power. But eventually, with that power, he's able to knock opponents out. And after knocking down Andre Ward in the second round with a good right hand, I'm sure many viewers thought, uh-oh, you know, here we go again. But Andre Ward was able to show the heart of a champion, respond, make adjustments, close the distance, fight at a pace and fight at a distance which had Kovalev uncomfortable. And eventually we saw as the fight progressed, Sergey Kovalev wear down from the pressure, mental and physical pressure. And we saw in the rematch that took place in June this year that Andre Ward essentially applied the same strategy in the rematch, which was applying the pressure, mental and physical pressure, and digging into Kovalev's body and making him work. And, you know, with the Kovalev style of fighter, you know, when you push the bully back, many times they're not going to respond the way they need to. And that was the case. I mean, you can tell what Sergey Kovalev's body language when he was fighting Andre Ward. He didn't like the body attacks. He didn't like the pressure. That's why he initiated many holds in the first fight, especially to try and negate Andre Ward's attack and to give himself a breather. And you can tell in the body language he didn't like that. He didn't like the pressure from Andre. You can definitely see it in the second fight when he complained about various low blows, which in fact weren't necessarily low blows, because with Sergey Kovalev's belt, his belt line was above his navel. His cup, was above the navel. So the belt line was essentially the navel. So when Andre would punch there, that's not a low blow. And the referee was very clear about that. And watching the fight, Roy Jones, who is obviously an experienced fighter and a Hall of Fame all-time great fighter, mentioned that as well. So there was a reason why Kovalev had his belt line that high in the first place, because he doesn't like the body. That's a tactic used by many fighters in the past. If you look back in time, if you get a chance, Lennox Lewis, he used to have his belt line extremely high. You know, there's many other fighters who would do that, you know, as a way to protect their body. And it's a matter of the referee, you know, in the fighter meetings, or even at the face-off, or when the fighters face off in the ring, making that distinction on what is a clear, effective body shot and what's a low blow. And the good referees will do that. So the question going into this fight is, what kind of Sergey Kovalev will we see? Will we see the menacing, threatening Kovalev who instilled fear in his opponents prior to Andre Ward? Or will we see Kovalev, once that pressure comes on, will he revert back to what he looked like against Andre Ward and wilt under pressure? You know, I think that's up to the opponent he faces and his mental standing. You know, because Kovalev has a new trainer now, so maybe the new trainer can instill a new mindset in Kovalev and give him some renewed confidence and belief in himself. We'll see. Personally, I don't believe the trainer was the issue with Kovalev in his fights against Andre Ward. If anything, ever since joining John David Jackson, Kovalev has looked like a much more polished, all-around fighter. He has better movement than when he did initially when he first came into the ring, or first came into the game, professional game. You know, he controls distance very well. His jab, his 1-2, I mean, he's very accurate. He knows when to throw it. He has, you know, more rhythm. He's not a typical prototype or a stereotypical Eastern European fighter. You know, straight up and down, robotic with his approach. He has some rhythm to him. He bends his knees a little bit. You know, see, and Kovalev is he's actually very athletic. I think that's an underrated trait from him. So I think John David Jackson was able to bring out these traits and enhance his boxing ability. And in the first fight, especially with Andre Ward, John David Jackson was instructing or providing very intelligent instructions for Kovalev. I'm unsure what the disconnect was and why he wasn't imploring what was being taught to him or being instructed to him, but you know, that's neither here or there. So will Kovalev respond differently to his new corner? You know, will he make excuses, or will he hold himself accountable and do what he needs to do to get the victory in this fight, going against a guy, I believe his name is Shabransky, who's not a bad fighter, but a lower level caliber fighter, obviously, compared to Andre Ward. So, I mean, this can be a good opportunity for Kovalev to, you know, shake off some of those demons and get back on the winning track and build his confidence back up, which can lead to other fights. You know, he's not done in the light heavyweight division. I know there are discussions of him moving up to cruiserweight, but he's not done in the light heavyweight division. I mean, he's still one of the best fighters in that division. Like I said, losing to one of the best fighters in boxing, you can't be penalized for that. It's just a matter of how you lose. If you quit on your stool, if you give up or whatnot, then of course you're not going to be received warmly by boxing critics or even the fans. But Sergey Kovalev, for all intents and purposes, he's still a very skilled fighter. He still has that ace up his sleeve, so to speak, his punching power. And he can very well beat any other fighter in the light heavyweight division, aside from Andre Ward. I think Adonis Stevenson will be problems for him, but, you know, we'll see if that match ever happens, if presented. But we'll see. Okay, so we got one person in there. What's going on, fam? You got a question? Anything you want to talk about? Fuck that vodka. Yeah, hopefully in his case he didn't overdose on that vodka for his training camp. Hopefully he took this training camp serious and he's 100% focused, because if Kovalev loses this fight, there's going to be a lot of questions in regards to whether or not he should continue fighting at this weight class or at all. I mean, Rigo versus Loma. I respect both fighters. Obviously, great amateur fighters and solid professionals. I'm a big Rigondeaux fan. I do think, though, that he's going to have to fight a perfect fight in order to win. Because not only is he fighting Lomachenko, but he's fighting the network. And he's fighting the promoter. His own promoter, Bob Arum, wasn't really messing with him. HBO wasn't messing with him. I believe this fight's going to be on ESPN, but HBO wasn't messing with him. There's many boxing writers like Dan Raphael who doesn't give Rigondeaux the proper respect. I believe he even blocked Rigondeaux on Twitter. Guys like Steve Kim, many other media members do not give Rigondeaux his proper respect because of his fight style and probably because he's black. I mean, let's be honest. I think he's going to have to fight damn near a perfect fight. And he's at a disadvantage because he basically had to move up 2 weight classes to fight Lomachenko to make this even happen. And, you know, being the older fighter and whatnot, everything from a political standpoint, they're going to be pushing towards Lomachenko. Lomachenko can throw like maybe 10 punches and like maybe land 1 or 2, but due to the potential crowd reaction and due to the commentary I know we're going to hear from ESPN or whoever's covering this fight, it's going to favor Lomachenko. So even if Lomachenko is losing the fight, the narrative is going to be that he's winning. That's what I'm already predicting. And I don't mean to be unfair to Lomachenko, because he can legitimately beat Rigondeaux. He's that skilled. But I believe Rigondeaux is going to have to fight the perfect fight. in order to get a victory over Lomachenko. He's gonna have to like either knock him out or really just damn near sweep the entire fight. Yeah, and Jim Lampley, he's a piece of shit. I wish he wouldn't commentate fights anymore. He's too consumed with hearing himself speak, hearing his voice and saying bang or whatever bullshit he likes to come up with. And you can tell he has his agenda, his narrative set when he's commentating a fight. Max Kellerman, unfortunately, is the same way. He's been trying to be like the new Larry Merchant for years now, which is sad because Max Kellerman actually knows a lot about boxing. He's very knowledgeable, and if he was just honest and candid whenever doing an actual fight, a telecast, instead of trying to promote the HBO agenda, then it would make the experience that much more enjoyable. But he has his biases too. Though, and the funny thing about that, just to go on further, whenever Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman are doing a telecast and they have Roy Jones or Andre Ward as the boxing analyst, whenever Ward or Jones makes a point about a certain fighter or about a fight and how it's going, Lampley and or Kellerman just love to try and correct them. Like they know, like they have more knowledge about boxing than these world champion Hall of Fame fighters do. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like why? It's just funny to me how they try and correct him every single time. So, and ESPN, they're damn near basically like a copycat of HBO when it comes to commentary. They're probably going to have Teddy Atlas. I hope to God they don't have Stephen A. Smith, because he's fucking horrible. I believe the last time Stephen A. Smith was on a telecast, he was trying to correct Tim Bradley about the action going on. I believe it was with Jeff Horn and Manny Pacquiao. He was trying to tell Tim Bradley what was going on. And Tim Bradley, having the experience, especially experience fighting Pacquiao, was telling him, it's feasible for Jeff Horn to be ahead in this fight, being as he's the aggressor, he was pushing the pace, and they're in Australia. It's like, don't be surprised if he's ahead in the fight. And, Stephen A. Smith was like, oh, no, how could you score for him, blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't Bradley necessarily scoring the fight for Horn. He was just pointing out, this may be the case. The judges may look at this. The crowd goes crazy every time Jeff Horn does something, so that could influence the judging. And, there aren't any clear-cut dominant rounds in this fight. There's a lot of swing rounds, a lot of rounds open for interpretation, so keep in mind that this could be a closer fight than what you think, Stephen A. Smith, or to any of the viewers. So, and I agree with you, King B83. I think that Rigondeaux is going to definitely expose some of Lomachenko's weaknesses. If you really look at Lomachenko's competition as of late, like his last two fights, the guys he's been fighting have been, substandard. Like, they're not top guys. I believe one guy was coming off a loss to Jose Valdez, I believe. I could be wrong on that. He was coming off of a loss, however. And then the guy he fought before that, he fought, Nicholas Walters to a draw. And anyone who saw that fight will tell you that Nicholas Walters beat dude decisively. And, there's a reputation that HBO, a narrative they're trying to create, stating that no one wants to fight Lomachenko, that he's so skilled, no one wants to fight him, and that's why he can't get the top fights. And, to an extent, yeah, there's some guys that may not want to fight him because he's skilled, but I think the bigger thing is some guys may not want to fight Lomachenko due to the low amount of money they're being offered. If if you're getting paid peanuts to fight someone, especially someone who's very skilled and elite and doesn't have name recognition like that, then, you know, why would you fight him? It's a matter of these fighters supposedly who are not fighting him, who are avoiding him. They're trying to weigh out the risk and reward factor. Now, I don't think there's a bunch of fighters ducking him, but I'm sure in some cases there may be guys not too willing to fight him based on the circumstances I just mentioned. You know, the funds not being there to finance the fight. And, you know, what ESPN is doing, or I'm sorry, what HBO is doing in regards to that narrative is the same thing they were doing with Gennady Golovkin, saying that no one was trying to fight him in the middleweight weight class and etc. But said there's certain guys that they love to cater to and promote in a certain way. Yeah, you're right. Bums. You're right. Bums. Do I think Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight in 2018? I really hope so. That's the main fight I really want to see. I really want to see that fight. And that's a fight that can honestly go either way, because both guys have skills and traits that can offset each other. I think from a technical standpoint, most people will agree that Anthony Joshua is more skilled from a technical sense, or more skilled from a technical sense than Deontay Wilder. You know, the way he throws his punches with his form, the crispness and accuracy with his punches. But with Deontay Wilder, I think there's a method to his madness, and obviously he has to have skill from a technical aspect on some level, because he is an Olympian. He won a bronze medal. His form may not look perfect compared to some other fighters, but his form is definitely effective enough to get the job done. When he needs to throw a straight punch, he can definitely throw it and land it with consistency. If anyone doubts that, they can ask Bermane Stiverne, because he's been on the wrong side of those punches on 2 occasions. So, I mean, it's an interesting fight. I think with Anthony Joshua, I think they're hesitant with that fight because, when I say his handlers, because they want to see him get more experience and develop more. I think there's a few things he needs to work on in order to fight a guy like Deontay Wilder. I think with Deontay Wilder, his hand speed will be a problem. His athleticism and his foot speed will also be a problem, because Anthony Joshua is very slow on his feet. And Anthony Joshua still, even though he's fighting at a championship level, and he went the distance to an extent with Vladimir Klitschko in their meeting earlier this year, we saw he gassed out. He got tired. And I think with Deontay Wilder, he paces himself a little bit better, and he's more of a natural athlete. So I think that will be some problems that Anthony Joshua and his team may want to work on prior to agreeing to that matchup. Will it happen in 2018? I really don't know. I don't think so, just based on the talks that, you know, we hear from Eddie Hearn, and even heard from earlier interviews with Joshua. I don't want to say that he's scared, because I think when you get to a certain point, I don't think fighters are really afraid of each other. A lot of it's just a matter of does the money match up, and, you know, they may fear, maybe not the actual fighter themselves, but like they might have the fear of losing. Like, how will a loss affect my money flow? How will it affect my marketability going forward? And I know Anthony Joshua is very, he's consumed with marketing different things, you know, endorsements, and maybe he's thinking, or his team rather is thinking, how will a loss affect my endorsements or my standing in the boxing world? Especially if you were to lose to a Deontay Wilder, I would think that Deontay would would stop him if he were to beat Anthony Joshua. And I'm just now catching your message. Yeah, HBO definitely did that crap with Gennady Golovkin. They were trying to say that no one's trying to fight him, and he's fighting the best competition available. But it's like, at the same token, I think Gennady Golovkin turned professional at age 24, and no disrespect to none of the guys that he fought, but he didn't really fight his first meaningful opponent until Kell Brook, and that was that last year, fighting Kell Brook, and he was a welterweight who moved up 2 divisions to fight him. I mean, I know he fought guys like Kasim Uma, but Kasim Uma was way past his prime when they fought. He fought David Lemieux, who had just, earned his title against, can't think of the guy he fought to beat the title, but David Lemieux, he lost to Marco Antonio Rubio on ESPN. He got knocked out by that guy. And there's a question of, how good is David Lemieux? I think David Lemieux is like a B-level fighter, but, I don't think he's A-level, top elite. Golovkin also beat that cat from Brooklyn. Can't think of his name right now. The short dude from Brooklyn that got knocked out by Lemieux. He fought him. I mean, to me, he's another B-level fighter. He fought Daniel Gill, another lower end B-level fighter. I mean, Golovkin's resume is pretty terrible. And the thing is, there have been guys who are willing to fight him. Andre Ward has been calling this man out for years. I believe some of the guys in super middleweight were willing to fight him. I've interviewed Peter Quillin like 4 or 5 times, and every single time I interviewed Quillin, who at the time was a middleweight champion, the WBO champion, he would say, from his end, he has no problems with fighting Gennady Golovkin. He sparred with him. He wasn't overwhelmed by his power. It wasn't nothing crazy like that. He'd be willing to fight him. For whatever reason, it never happened. Of course, there's politics, but differences in network. But from Peter Quillen's end, he was always willing to fight Gennady Golovkin. And just looking at Golovkin's resume again, your first fight against someone meaningful who was like elite was Kell Brook, and that's a welterweight. And then, after that, you fight Danny Jacobs, who was an elite middleweight who beat Peter Quillin, and you struggle and have life or death. And I think Jacobs beat Golovkin, but unless Jacobs knocked that man out or beat him even more decisively, they're not going to give him that victory, because they were setting up the Canelo and Golovkin fight. And even in the Golovkin-Canelo fight, it was scored a draw. Some people argue Golovkin won. Some argue Canelo won. Watching it initially, I had it a draw. Watching it again, I scored it for Canelo. But I think you can argue the fight either way. So it's like, Golovkin hasn't really fought anyone until he was like age 34, 35. And then when he started fighting people, he's struggling. So that tells me his handlers are trying to hide him from the top competition, while setting a narrative that he's the boogeyman and he's the most feared guy. And HBO was trying to hype, or they were hoping on the fact that they could hype up this Eastern European fighter and rake in money off of him, but they weren't really able to capitalize off that. And that's because HBO, they didn't like the talent, the black fighters they had at the time. The most prized fighter in all of boxing in regards to value they had on their network, and that was Floyd Mayweather. And they treated him like shit. They dogged him every chance they had, and that's the most valuable fighter in boxing. One of the most valuable athletes, period. And HBO had him on the network and treated him like shit. So, I mean, that goes to tell you what their priorities are. And it goes to show you what their business sense or lack thereof is. Okay, yeah, Curtis Stevenson, there you go. That's who Golovkin fought. And yeah, you know, as we're talking about, Eddie Hearn wants to keep that gravy train rolling with the whole Anthony Joshua thing and Deontay Wilder. But there's only going to be so much time until the public demands the fight. I mean, as a matter of fact, the public, they should continue to demand the fight and put pressure on Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn to make this fight happen. And yeah, we all know, as you mentioned, King B83, Gennady Golovkin, there was no way in hell he was stepping in the ring with Andre Ward. Andre Ward is that man's kryptonite. That's the worst style for him. Not only would Andre Ward beat Gennady Golovkin, in my opinion, I believe he would knock him out. And it would be one-sided. It would be, to me, the fight would resemble, in a sense, what Bernard Hopkins did to Felix Trinidad when they met back in 2001, where we saw Bernard Hopkins just outclass Trinidad and outbox him and punish him for 12 rounds before knocking him out, emphasizing his point. Because, I mean, Andre Ward, he can control distance very well. I think Roy Jones had mentioned it on a recent telecast. I think it was with Demetrius Andrade when he fought Fox. He had mentioned that Andre Ward's the best fighter he's seen in regards to controlling distance. So, I mean, if there's a fighter out there who's better at fighting on the outside than Andre Ward, then Andre Ward can take it on the inside and fight in the clinch or fight in the pocket or in the trenches. Or if there's a fighter who's better on the inside than Andre Ward, he has no issues adapting and fighting from a distance and fighting on the outside and having... Oh, man. Gennady Golovkin would have so much issues because Golovkin needs space in order to get his shots off. And he likes to press forward. Golovkin can't fight going backwards, and I don't think he can fight in the pocket. And being as Andre Ward can do all those things and has a high amateur pedigree, winning the gold medal, I mean, it's just nightmares. And he's bigger, or at least just as big as Golovkin, if not bigger. So Golovkin wouldn't be able to impose any kind of size or strength advantage. It'd be straight hell for Golovkin. Man said, disable Sanchez. Yeah, Abel Sanchez, he's a really good trainer. I think he actually trained Terry Norris back in the day, who was a really good fighter back at 154. Abel Sanchez, he's a good trainer and a really good manager because he knows better. He knows to keep Golovkin away from Andre Ward. And I believe I think he's still the trainer for Sullivan Barrera, or at the time was training Sullivan Barrera, who are confirmed what they already knew, that Andre Ward, oh yeah, ridiculous skills. I remember watching knocked out John the Beast Mugabe, and then of course I watched his fights with his fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. That was some nasty shit. And then I think he fought Iron Barkley. Alright, I finally made it home, so I'm about to get something to eat. But appreciate you, fam, for chopping it up with me. Thank you for everyone listening, tuning in. Rich, okay, for sure. I'm gonna hit you up on BX. And one of our other KO Corner members, Rich, should be hitting us up with a video pretty soon. So stay tuned. Once again, it's KO Corner. We signing out.